This episode is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is the #1 tool for all podcasters. You can record high-fidelity audio between remote locations and get studio-quality sound. Go to Zencastr.com and use coupon code THATENTERTAINS for 20% off for 3 months or 20% off an annual plan.
This is a That's Entertainment podcast.
Awesome.
Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome. That was awesome. You guys are awesome.
No,
You're awesome.
no.
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. This week's show was such a fun conversation, and we'll get to that in just a second. As you guys can tell from when you're listening to these, I'm especially with this episode going forward, we're posting a couple in a row. September was a busy month when it came to everything, mainly Comic-Con and preparing for Keystone Comic-Con, the first ever Keystone Comic-Con. So you're going to listen probably after this episode post, within the next day or two, you're going to see 3 more episodes post, and that's episode 139, I believe. Or episode 138 with Roshni. Episode 140 is my Keystone Comic-Con coverage. I sat down with Mike post-con. We recorded an intro and outro. We're going to present to you in 2 separate episodes my interview with Megaran and my interview with Sandy King Carpenter. Great conversations. Obviously, the podcast landscape has changed as far as episodes are concerned with Everything is Awesome. Compared to what I announced earlier in the month, I believe maybe even late last month. But we're chugging along, going forward with pushing some interviews back, and we're still going to have Lee from Slim Turkey on in early October now, maybe mid-October. We're going to have Jeff Stormer on in mid-October to help promote his Kickstarter. We're going to have Ben Wallace from Priest Post and Pot of Love. And a whole bunch of things on in early October. So we have a lot of guests coming at you that you'll be hearing from. But for now, we are here, and I just want to take a quick second to thank you for taking time out of your day. You could be sitting around literally doing anything, listening to anything, and you've taken the time to listen to Everything is Awesome. Whether you're a first-time listener or a long-time listener, thank you so much for being here, for being on the journey. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to my guests. I know that for sure. If you are looking for other ways to help support this show, you can go to patreon.com/thatentertains. That Patreon is a way to subscribe to the That's Entertainment Podcast Network. That gets you early access to Everything is Awesome, to The Ladies Who Rant, to Bullies Keep Out. It gets you some exclusive content that we have to start rolling out in October, probably from pretty much all the shows that are on the network. We're going to be launching a couple of new shows that are going to have more exclusive content down the way. We'll get to that in a second, but for as little as $2 a month, $5 a month is kind of the sweet spot where you get some early access. Not early access. I think early access is for everything, but the $5 a month spot is the sweet spot to get the bonus content. That's very important. And we have higher tiers where you can do more and cooler things with us. And all that money goes towards helping cover costs for all these podcasts, whether it's in-house shows where I'm paying out of pocket for them, or if it's for our syndicated shows like Victims and Villains, where they will be reimbursed their hosting fees for contributing to our Patreon. So it would mean the world to all of us if you could do that, because if we can cover hosting fees for all our shows, they can then go ahead and use the money they normally would spend paying me to do the hosting and editing, or paying their hosting provider in the case of Victims and Villains. They can use that to create more content and do what they want to do full time, or at least take another step in that direction. So subscribing to our Patreon at patreon.com/thatentertains doesn't just benefit this show, it benefits the entire network. and benefiting the network means just more content coming at you guys. More content. Like in October, we are going to be starting, I think I've been calling it 2 new shows, but I think the one might be getting pushed a little bit, but for sure, we are starting After Party of One on October 1st. After Party of One is a show where I sit down and chat with people in the tabletop role-playing community about the Party of One podcast, hosted by Jeff Stormer, fellow Philadelphia podcaster. And he releases about 4 shows a month, and we're going to sit down for about 30 to 45 minutes and talk about all those episodes and just kind of hit on some of the themes, some of the mechanics, hit on what we enjoyed about the episode. If there's anything that we kind of thought didn't work, we may even bring that up. We're not, just because Jeff's a friend of mine, just because we are a show that is covering just because we're a show that is covering Party of One doesn't mean that we're not going to be critical of it when we need to. Because I believe in 2 sides of the same coin. You're going to have the good with the bad, but for the most part, if you're a fan of Party of One podcast, you know that it's always usually good. There's very little things that I've ever listened to from Jeff where I'm like, well, that didn't work. I might not be as passionate about it as some other people, including Jeff is, but I definitely think that he's just such a great storyteller, and that's why I wanted to start this this after talk show for Party of One. And I had the idea to do it for a couple different shows, but I really wanted to have a better working relationship. Jeff and I consider Jeff a really good friend. We are podcasting buddies, and we've gone on each other's shows. But I wanted to have a working relationship with him as well, because I just really enjoy his content, and he makes me want to be a better podcaster. So that's kind of how After Party of One was born. We're actually, at the time of me recording this pre-intro, we're going to be recording our first episode of Party of One tonight. Still looking for a second guest. Last minute, it may be just Jeff and I. It may be me, Jeff, and somebody else, but it will never be more than 3 people. I like to sit down with a smaller group and discuss these shows to kind of keep it true to the Party of One theme of him and one other player. I wanted to go beyond that just because I like having more voices at the table. I want this show to be very inclusive, and I want to be able to feature more people at the same time. Anyway, so we are going to be recording that tonight. We're also going to be starting, I believe we're going to be recording it in mid-October with maybe an early November launch, and that is Black Squadron Radio. That's going to be a fun Star Wars podcast. Can't wait to bring that to you guys. We also kind of fell into our laps. Another show will be starting probably in November as well, but more details on that after it's actually we get the 2 or 3 episodes we want to bank first banked, and then I will make that announcement. So thank you guys for listening to the show. Thank you guys for supporting us every way that you do, whether that's through Patreon, whether that's through leaving a 5-star rating and review, or if it's just word of mouth recommendations, telling your friends and family about this show. Let's get to it. This week, we have a great guest. I sat down and talked with Kenzie Bond, the author of The 90-Day House. Kenzie is from Texas, and we sit down, we chat about Texas, Philly. Obviously, there's kind of a connection there when it comes to Eagles versus Dallas. She's from the Houston area, so not so much fun there, but we did talk football, NFL for me, college and high school for her. We chatted about all the places that are worth visiting, including the great Warner Brothers tour in L.A., Disney, both World and Land, Sesame Place, both the old Texas site and the current Philadelphia one. We also chat about Kenzie's writing, what's next for her, and more. Without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Kenzie right here on awesomepodcast.com and thatentertains.com/network. You mentioned you're from Texas. What part of Texas are you from?
I'm in Bryan. I'm in Bryan, but it's Bryan College Station, home of the Fighting Texas Aggies. I don't know if you're into college football.
No, so the Northeast. Now, I would say that there are parts that, like, Penn State area is a big college football town, but I'm from the Philadelphia area, so this is obviously why I'm asking. But yeah, this area is more NFL. I think it's once you hit Atlanta, once you go that far south down the East Coast, Atlanta becomes a big college town.
So here in Texas, both high school and college football is a very big thing. But growing up here in Bryan College Station, yeah, football has. Although I'm not a football fan, and truth be told, I've never even been to an Aggie game. It is a huge part of life here. So yeah, that's what we're known for. So if any of your listeners are college football fans, I'm sure they've heard of Texas A&M. So I'm in College
Yes.
Station. It's about an hour north of Houston.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and now that you say it by the short name of Texas A&M, like that sounds familiar to me.
Yes.
But yeah, it's my experience with Texas. I've been down there. I used to travel for work, so my experience with Texas is, I think, primarily the Dallas area. Is that where like that? I think it's called the Super Pages Amphitheater or something like that.
I'm not sure. Probably because you've got Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, all in a metroplex, and there's so much there. But yeah, that's not in Houston, so it probably is Dallas. But yeah, I mean, I'd be willing to bet. And even here, things get renamed or
Yeah, yeah.
building. So yeah, and Dallas is. I mean, it's a nice area, and if I was planning to move to a larger city, I'd definitely look at Dallas or Fort Worth.
Well, I will like yeah. Those amphitheaters go through so many names. Like they're the one the one that's local to Philly is actually in New Jersey, but that's like I don't even know what the current name of it now because it's changed hands so many times. I just still call it the Tweeter Center because that's what it was. Like when I was a kid, it was the Tweeter Center. But I so I maybe I've been to Houston once. I don't know, but yeah. So I used to travel for work all the time, and the first time I ever went, I was flying through Dallas, and being the typical Philadelphia Eagle fan I am, I dressed head to toe in my Eagles gear, like
Oh
ready
no.
to. But and I was like, yeah, I want to be this guy. I want to go down, and I if I had to guess, it was probably a time. It was the McNabb era. So early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, and we were playing well, not as well as we did this past year, but we were playing well. And so I was like, oh yeah, I want to be that guy, and it's just gonna be like a fun little fight that happens when I get to the airport. And like I remember going to a Dunkin' Donuts to grab a coffee or something after I landed at Dallas. Big grin on my face, waiting for them to say something. And the guy goes, "Oh, you're from Philly, an Eagles fan." I'm like, "Yeah, what of it?" And he goes, "You guys are playing real well this year." And then I had to turn around with my tail between my legs because I was the stereotypical Eagles fan that was just the a-hole.
And you got some good old Texas hospitality, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, and it's. I mean, that's a product I think of partially being in my 20s at the time, and I still like even now in my 30s. I rag on Dallas a little bit, obviously, because it's just what you do. Just like I know that we have local Dallas fans that rag on us as well, and ragged on us all year, despite the eventual Super Bowl win. But I won't bore you with any more football talk since you're not a huge football fan. That's my experience with Texas, specifically Dallas, which as an Eagles fan, I was pleasantly surprised with how friendly everyone was, because that's like kind of not what the sports world painted as the picture.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you had a good experience in Texas because it definitely could have gone another way.
Well, and I feel like that's true everywhere. Like I know that Philadelphia, I'm sure you've read things. Everyone has read things about Philly being a terrible sports town, a terrible town, and how they treat their people and guests and whatnot. Specifically, like after we beat Minnesota and after we won the Super Bowl, about like the chaos that ensued. And admittedly, that some of the things that happened after we won the Super Bowl was a little like, I was like, all right, that's going a little too far, guys. But no one talked about the stuff that happened in New England, in Boston, or outside of Boston.
See, I was going to say Boston is what I would think of as being rough.
Well, and I have a friend that lives out in Rhode Island, so he gets a lot of that, New England news. And he was telling me, and I read one article about it, and it didn't really blow up, but he was telling me it blew up a little bit out there, where after the loss, there was, there was a little bit of rioting, at least what the news showed. So I guess my point is, like, I feel like every city has the same quote unquote troubles that Philly has. It's just that because we threw batteries at Santa Claus one time, we get it all the time.
Yeah, that's a bit extreme.
I know. Generally though, I mean, I don't know how it is where you're from, but I live in the suburbs of Philly, so I'm just like 45 minutes northeast. I'm actually closer to Trenton, New Jersey than I am to Philadelphia. But what I enjoy about this area specifically is that it's not a big city, so I don't have to, as a dad with two young kids, like I don't have to deal with any of that. Like they have a backyard and whatnot. But like within 2 to 2.5 hours, I can literally get to anywhere that I think would be interesting. New York City is, by car maybe a little bit further, but by train about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Philadelphia is 45 minutes from me. I can get to the beach within an hour and a half. I can get down to like DC if I'm really pushing the speed limit. I can get there in 2 hours. There's just a lot of like history in this area that like when people say, "Oh man, are you ever going to move?" and like I tease about moving somewhere warmer because I hate the snow, but I don't know, and maybe I don't know if it's if there's in Texas, if you feel the same way in your area. It just, and I feel like everyone has so like can say within 2 hours I can do whatever I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unless you're like in the middle of North Dakota or somewhere like that. But now your location sounds amazing. Where I am, an hour is Houston, which is hot, but there really is, amazing just cultural and social
Mm-hmm.
events. It takes me about maybe 2.5 hours to get to Dallas. Mainly people here jet back and forth to Houston. If you wanted to go to Galveston, which is not my beach of choice, I'd prefer to go to Port Aransas. That's going to be about 3 hours away. But here in Texas, especially, we drive. I mean,
Yeah.
and I just drove last week, and I told you I was traveling to Colorado and back, which is a 16-hour one-way drive. So yeah. Well, my dad doesn't fly, so if it wouldn't have been for him, we would have flown. But we're used to driving. I don't have the locations that you have. I mean, to be within a couple hours drive of New York and DC, that's amazing. But I mean, I can get to Houston in under 2 hours, so that is pretty good. But like you, here in Bryan College Station, we're approaching 300,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely not a small town, and having a tier one research university, Texas A&M here, we do get a lot of big names, both, just cultural events. We had the president visit a couple of years ago. So we definitely have some qualities of a larger city, but without some of the headaches of a larger city.
And you know what, that's what I love about like the suburbs is that it's at least being close enough to the city and city events. And like I said, I probably 10 years ago, 20-some-year-old Kev who had no kids and no real responsibilities, I would have loved to live in the city of Philadelphia. Specifically, there's a little section called Manayunk where my uncle lived for a while, and I would hang out there a lot because he was more like a big brother to me. He was only 16 years older than I was, and it was cool. Just like that, there's this big like bike race that I forget what it raises money for, but it's a bike race that goes around I forget, I don't know how long it is, but it goes around like the Manayunk area a few times. And that was just like for everyone sitting around watching it, it was just like all the neighborhoods opening up their backyards and having like a big, like, backyard drinking from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. kind of party. But I don't have to deal with that in suburbs. And so I get kind of the best of both worlds. And I think I would assume most suburbs kind of can claim the same thing, but it's nice to have those big city luxuries just a stone throws away.
Absolutely.
So You are, very, very specifically not a real estate agent, but
Correct.
explain what it is, because I reread it and I can't get the exact wording in my head now that I'm not looking at my phone. So please tell me and my audience like what it is. It's not real estate agent, but it's in that industry, I guess, kind of.
Sure. Profession aside, because actually I'm a high school principal, so that's like my day job.
Okay.
We could talk about high school football all day long here in Texas. So I recently wrote a book, and it's currently an Amazon bestseller in at least one category, maybe more than one right now. It's called The 90-Day House, and it's okay. So I guess I'll give you a summary of what it is, and we can talk about how I came to the idea.
Okay.
I think. Well, I came to the idea to write the book because I've bought and sold several houses. I actually just moved back to Bryan College Station 3 years ago. I've lived various places in Texas. And I found that I bought at really strange times too. When I bought my first house, it was at the height of the real estate crash and the recession. So that was an interesting journey. But people, being younger, when I was younger, it always seemed like buying a house was very out of reach. And I don't know why I felt that way. We grew up in a house, we live in the suburbs. I'm not sure, but I found that people tend to go about it the wrong way. And actually, they go about it exactly backwards. Most people go looking for a house first. They see a house they like, call a realtor or whatever. And then at the very end of falling in love with the house and, wanting it, they try to go and get financing for the house. And, sometimes that doesn't work out well because if you haven't been keeping on top of everything, there's a number of things. There could be things on your credit. You really don't know how much you can afford. And you're looking at a, $250,000 house when you can afford half of that. And so just seeing myself do it when I bought my first house and people do it throughout the years, I thought, okay, here's something that I've done multiple times and typically at very weird times. Like I said, I bought my first house literally as the real estate market was crashing all around us. And I've been able to do it, oddly enough, like within 30 days of deciding I needed to buy a house to close. And I've always been able to do it with no money down. And so for whatever reason, I've always been really interested in both the real estate market. I like houses and I do like watching the trends in both my area and nationwide, but I'm really interested in the mortgage industry for some reason. I'm not a mortgage broker. I'm not going to sell anybody a mortgage, but I think just because, we've been told that buying a house is the American dream, and I'm with that. I think there's something, empowering about owning your own property, whether it's a condo or a farm, but it's out of reach for so many people. And I think it's just out of reach because they don't know what to do. Not that they necessarily can't, meet the qualifications or afford it. Half the time people are paying more in rent than they would be paying in a mortgage.
Oh,
I
yeah.
would. In the last rental that I lived in here, I was paying $1,600 a month for a house that's half the size of the one that I just bought. And I'm paying less now in mortgage, insurance, and taxes. And it's crazy. And so I wrote this book really just to show people, here's what you need to do to be able to buy a house in the next 90 days. And it's very important right now. I don't know how much you keep up with the lending industry or real estate trends, but we're in a really strange time. Pretty much completely recovered from the disaster of a decade ago, and lending institutions are finally relaxing again, and they're actually, for the first time in 10 years, starting to offer no down payment mortgages again. And now we're not talking about the crazy ones, the adjustable rates where you get in and you're making an affordable payment for the first 2 years and then it triples. We're talking about your 30-year fixed rate mortgages, no money down. And it's not just one or two. It started out 2 years ago with one or two, but big name lenders, a lot of local credit unions are doing this. And then at the same time, so related or not related, housing prices are climbing slowly but steadily. So we're not talking about what happened in 2008, where it was almost like a false growth, and then it popped, and people lost thousands of dollars of equity quickly. It's a very organic climb, but like right now, and I keep saying this, and the thing is, I'm not selling anything. I'm not a real estate agent. I'm not a mortgage broker, but right now is the time to buy a house because the trend of the price increase is not going to stop. I posted some articles on my Facebook page. Reuters has posted these economists. It is not going to stop. It's going to keep growing. But again, lenders are ready to lend. And it's a very interesting time that we're in. But I have just found in my own experience, people don't know what to do. So sorry, I kind of just went away. I just kind of ran away with it.
No, that's fine. That's fine because I'm such an irresponsible person when it comes to money. So, I like my fiance takes care of everything, but I am interested in listening to that kind of stuff, and it's I gotta say, like, sitting here as a homeowner, I even though I've gone through it, like I couldn't even we often talk about like what do we have to do like when we decide to get a bigger house, like I forget the whole process, and it becomes even more, at least in my eyes, and I'm sure you can unwind it for me to be not complicated, but in my eyes it becomes even more complicated because now it's not just about buying a house, but it's also selling the house that we're in and finding the happy balance of like, can we get everything to align at the same time?
Yes. And I have fortunately never been in that position because it is. I mean, you have to really be calculated and know, hopefully, ahead of time. So when I moved, I left, the last home and sold it. I wanted to buy a house, but it was going to happen so quickly, and it's very hard to make it align. And here's another, I guess, caveat: if you're moving from one market to another, and this could be, one town over, this could be another state, but if you're moving from a buyer's market to a seller's market or vice versa, it's going to be very hard to get your timing to align. And so for someone like you, when you decide to move to a bigger home, you're going to have to get all the financial piece in order before you even start to look for a house. You're going to have to go through your pre-approval process. You're going to actually have to start the approval process because when you put in an offer on your new house and the one that you're in sales, it's like, bam, they want it to close right then. Bam, bam, bam. And then if the people that you're buying a house from are in the same situation as you, you're talking about a domino effect where everybody is waiting for everybody else's house to sell. And so it's so important that you have all your ducks in a row and you're not going through this process with your lender of, what's this on your credit report, or we need more income verification, or, the underwriter wants this, the underwriter wants that. And you could have a seller in the house that you want that backs out of the deal, and now you've got your heart set on this house and they're backing out.
Yeah, it's that all does not sound fun or easy, and it is actually kind of reminiscent of when you're just a first time home buyer, where and we did we're very lucky in the sense that I don't know. I can't believe that it would be me because I'm an idiot when it comes to this kind of stuff. If it's not about Batman, I usually have a hard time comprehending what to do. I'm just a giant man child, but the going through the first time with this house was we did pretty much all the steps that you described there that you would do for when you're selling and buying, except we have to worry about selling. But it's just it's like we have people that are in our life that recently I don't know if they sold yet, but they're like in the process of trying to sell their house, and like they if they didn't already, they're like, I know people are put a bid in or something, and they are also like haven't looked at houses yet. I'm like, how do you not like, how do you put your house on the market and not know where you're gonna go? Like that's so like I'm not a person that gets many panic attacks, but that would give me a panic attack.
Mm-hmm. In fact, it's funny that you bring that up because I ran into an old friend about 2 weeks ago from high school, and we were talking about where we live now, and we still live here in the same town. She was like, "Yeah, we just closed on my house last week, and so I have 3 weeks to find a new." And I'm like, "Oh my, you're not going to be able to buy a new house in 3 weeks if you're not prepared." But yeah, she was just kind of blasé about it. I was like, wow. And that's, here where I am right now, it's kind of what you call a seller's market for entry level homes, which I know the real estate market there is a little bit different, but we'll say for Texas, for homes, 250,000 and under, that would kind of be your entry level first time home buyers. And you put one on the market and it's going. This house that I'm in right now, I saw it online one day. I text my realtor and I was like, "Hey, I'm interested in this house." And she said, "There's already 3 offers on it. They're taking offers until 6 o'clock tomorrow. So why don't we just put in an offer tonight?" And it's like 9 o'clock at night. I hadn't even seen the house. And, I'll submit it. You go look tomorrow. And if you like it, we'll proceed. That's the kind of market that we have here for home 250. So fortunately, I did get the house. Wasn't the highest bidder. And I think we put in an offer for about 10,000 over the asking price. Wasn't the highest, but we had the best terms. But you put a house that's 300,000 and up, and it'll sit on the market for 6 months to a year.
Yeah, yeah, and that sounds pretty similar to this. I live in Bucks County, which is just like I said, just outside of Trenton, 45 minutes north of Philly. That sounds very similar to this area, or at least it did. I guess we're going on almost 6 years that we've been in the house. So, and I would imagine that it's maybe only gone up a little bit. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I know that when we bought, that sounds very similar. Where we didn't look at anything that was above 200,000, just because we were, and what I found super interesting, because our first real estate agent, we made the mistake of like looking at like the sidebar of Zillow, and like seeing like the top rated real estate agent that was, I don't know what the distance was, but he ended up being in Philly, so he was consistently late, but had like a 5-star rating. Like I don't know how he got the 5-star rating, but he didn't mesh well with us, we found out. And it was a very we eventually switched to like a family used realtor that was a much better experience. And she was the one that kind of said like, "Well, like, listen, I know you're looking at this price range, and it's kind of limiting you to this one township, but if you just increase a little bit and go over to this township, which is the township I wanted to live in, the taxes are lower." So like it will, and it's all those crazy things that like I never would think of that can affect what the monthly payment is, and you can actually afford something higher if you're in a surprisingly, like for us, this is a better township. It just has lower taxes.
And you bring up a good point in that most people, and it's not judgment, I mean, because I did it too, they do go into buying a house not fully aware of what they can afford. At least you had a price in mind. A lot of people don't. They don't run any numbers. They don't get pre-approved, or they don't run any of the calculators online. And so, they'll fall in love with the house, or like you said, believe that they're priced out of an area. You bring up a good point with the taxes, because they definitely fluctuate even here in Texas. From county to county, they can fluctuate, but within a person's own financial situation, you could make, just throwing a number out there, 50,000 a year, but be able to afford more than a person making 100,000 a year just based on your bills. If you're making 50,000 a year and you've paid your car off, and maybe you have a little credit card that you're paying on, but you're otherwise debt free, you're going to have a lot easier time getting approved for a larger amount than the person who's making twice that, but has student loan debt and 4 or 5 credit cards, and they just bought a new car. So just like with your situation, what you can afford is not always based on that purchase price. It's also not always based just on your salary. And I think that gets a lot of people. It either makes them think they can afford more than they really can, and then you're extremely disappointed when you run the numbers, or you limit yourself and you run the numbers and you can find out that you can afford a lot more than you thought.
Yeah, and I remember when we did it, like we did the pre-approval, and I know we were pre-approved for like something much higher than what we bought for, but like we no, I can't take any credit. It was my fiance that like crunched all the numbers, and I mean I helped, and whatnot, but she's like, all right, we got to make sure this is this, and like cross all our T's, dot all our I's, and like, so there's no way we can afford a house that's, and I want to say we maybe were pre-approved for like 100 grand more than what we ended up buying for or something like that. And she's like, there's no way that we're going to be able to realistically afford. And I think we're maybe in a spot now where we could do that, because the kids, like, kids aren't in daycare anymore, or the one's only part-time. So we're slowly freeing up income from that ever expensive daycare. But and that's why we are considering a bigger house in a year or two. And we'll start this whole process over again, where I want to beat my head against the wall looking at houses. And I'm sure that's actually the fun part. I love looking at houses. We were lucky enough to with the first real estate agent, and I don't know, I feel like that obviously the right real estate agent, whether it's because they just mesh better with you and your personality, or because they're actually helpful, which was our second real estate agent, was both a better match personality wise, and like kind of understood like how to navigate with us, and kind of like, I know you don't want to do this, but like, here's why, you should just look at it and do this, and see what happens. And kind of like forced us to do some things, was really, really good for us. And we had only seen with the first real estate agent, we didn't see anything that really wowed us, because we kept ourselves to a certain township that was high taxes, and not the school that for me, it was like, if we move to this school district, we're only going to be here for 5 years, because I grew up in this area, and so did my fiance. But I was like, I don't want to send my kid to the school district. It's not going to happen. So we had like going there, we put ourselves in a built-in time limit where like we had to move in 5 years. The second real estate agent like got us in the township that we wanted, the school district that we agreed on, and there was only one house that we put a bid on that we didn't get, and it was like kind of a bummer. But then we looked at it this way of like, well, that one room had like nothing but hardwood floors, and maybe a kid would have slipped and fell and got hurt, so it's better that we got this other house that's pretty similar, and actually ended up having more property space because it's a corner property, and was cheaper.
And I feel like your real estate market where you are has probably been pretty stable. I don't know if y'all were hit as hard by the 2008.
Yeah, probably. I don't know, because I'm a pretty big man child, so like what the real estate I know was about a decade ago is when it kind of collapsed.
Yeah, it was 2008. It was summer of 2008. So honestly, about exactly 10 years ago.
Yeah. So 10 years ago, I was probably worried about like who was playing Batman next, or some nonsensical stuff. I was not I was 24 years old 10 years ago. So I was not at all ready to be a full on adult yet.
So I'm going to get off topic for a minute. Yeah. You've mentioned Batman like 3 times now. Just throw this out here, to either make you jealous, or you'll say, yeah, I did that too. I visited both Universal and Warner Brothers Studios. I go to LA about every year or so, and they have a complete museum dedicated to Batman. So I've touched all the Batman cars, the Batman suits. I've played with the actual bat signal. Just so you know.
If we had this conversation almost exactly a year ago, I would have said I never did it. But this time last year, we were actually I think actually this time last year we were probably flying home from LA, but we ended up my fiance part-time she's a teacher, but part-time we do LuLaRoe, the leggings company. Mm-hmm. And they have their convention out in Anaheim every year. So we didn't go this year, but we went last year, and we tacked on an extra day or two so that we could go to Disneyland, because I mean, the first time I went to Disney World with the kids was the first time I went ever as a person. Like I never went when I was a kid. So I was super excited to check out Disneyland. And then we ended up doing the Warner Brothers tour as well. And they take, well, and it was, so when we went last year, they had half of it closed because they were like opening up, I think, the Wonder Woman display that day.
Mm-hmm.
And so we only got to see like half of it, which was the Batman, Superman stuff. And then then further back was, I guess, like the garage or whatever with all the cars and all. So I did get to see it and hang out there. So but I've only been out there out west in Anaheim once, and that was last year. So that is it's something that I would love to do again because it's I don't know, I love Batman, so it would be, I don't think I can get tired of looking at Batman collectible things.
It was totally wasted on me because I don't even think that I've seen a Batman.
Oh my God, how do you go your life without seeing a Batman movie?
I don't know. But so I love the Warner Brothers studio, and honestly, it was probably my favorite part of this last trip, and even doing Universal, which is it's just completely different. But I liked Warner Brothers better for a number of reasons. But yeah, I mean the Batman stuff was like fun to play with, but it had no value to me. And I have all these pictures of people like, what is this? Oh, it's Batman. Oh, okay. There's a number of but yeah, I mean you should go. I get out to LA as much as I can just because to me there is something for everybody there. And I'm a little bit older than you, so I kind of came of age in the 90s, and there was a lot of West Coast influence. And so, we're totally off topic there, but I'd love it. And to me, it's my soul city. If I was going to move anywhere, it'd be there.
Well, first of all, this show is known for its tangents, so don't worry about going off topic.
Because I will go off on one for sure.
But yeah, what I really, and I think both my fiance and I, what we were looking forward to with the tour, the Warner Brothers tour, was the Friends set. And that was cool. Like, cause we're both massive Friends fans. And that was like just a fun, like, oh, let's go get our picture taken on the couch. And like, really that part of the tour, I think all the Batman stuff was like before that. And this was like the self-guided part of the tour was Friends on, basically, if I remember correctly. And all the other stuff after that was kind of cool. And it was kind of like neat reading about stuff, but like that and the Central Perk Cafe were like my favorite parts of that section of the tour, because I could really care less about, I mean, I'm sure all that stuff had been part of my life at some point, but Friends is definitely one of the most impactful things that's happened on television in forever. Really, it's I don't know if there's a sitcom that's ever been better or ever will be better.
Are you a Big Bang Theory fan?
Sometimes, like, I can watch it. I don't like it as much as Friends. It's obviously super popular, and I guess maybe there's people that will say that it is like the next Friends, but the issue I have with that show is that show started right around when a show called Community started, which was on NBC. And they were both kind of like the quote unquote geek show, except Big Bang is a geek show written seemingly by popular kids who are guessing what geek culture is. And sometimes they get it right, sometimes they don't. And I think as the show's gone on, they're getting it right more and more, because geek culture has kind of taken over the world a little bit more. So it's kind of, everyone kind of knows what geek culture is. But Community was just really, really, like, it was written really smart, like really smart writing. There was, the geek stuff wasn't like put out on Front Street like Big Bang does it. Like, a lot of it was just kind of low key. Like, one of my favorite jokes that Community did is they took 3 seasons to tell a Beetlejuice joke. By every season, so like one episode somebody said Beetlejuice, and then in the 3rd season, when they said it for the 3rd time, just randomly in the background, you could barely see it, but you saw Beetlejuice walk by. And to me, that's just really intelligent, and it never got the credit that Big Bang did, because it's off the air now. But Big Bang is, for me, I like just kind of putting it on in the background. It's kind of like, oh, there's nothing else on, I'll watch Big Bang.
I do that too. I the reason I ask is we got to visit the set at Warner Brothers, and I'm sure if we did.
Did we? I don't know if we got we got I forgot we saw Conan. They took us to the Conan set, and they took us to they took us to another show, and they took us to I guess it was technically the Fuller House set, which I forget, maybe not. I honestly forget what the other set was. It was not Big Bang though. They didn't take us to the Big Bang set.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. And I don't think that, and I watch Big Bang, I'm kind of like you, it'll be on, reruns and I'll just have it on. I don't think it'll ever be a Friends. I mean, I don't. I don't think it has the depth of Friends. And Friends, to me in Friends, every character was a fully fleshed out character. And of course the focus would shift from time to time. But you think of Big Bang, and to me it's, you have your two main characters, and then everyone else is just kind of a supporting character. That's the way I feel. But it was neat going on to the set because it is a pretty big show right now. They weren't filming, but that was definitely a high point there at Warner Brothers, which again, it was, I would go back. Next time I go to LA, I'm going back for sure.
Yeah, it was a fun tour, and I would totally go back, and I'm sure we'll go back out, because what we really liked about out there, and that tour is great, but Disneyland was great because it, like they just introduced when we went last year the I think they're calling it the Max Pass, which is like the fast pass down at Disney World, and so it was like anyone could buy it. It was super cheap. It was like $10 for the day a person. So we paid $20 to get the Max Pass. And there was people in line, like when we would stand in line for rides, that were saying, man, even on the Max Pass, these lines are like outrageously long. And my fiance and I look at each other. We're like, man, they've never been to Disney World, because like the Disney World lines are ridiculously long. Even with like Fast Pass, like you can wait up to like a half hour or so. And I don't think in Disneyland we waited more than maybe about 20 minutes for a ride. And that was a long wait for us. So, when we we try to go to Disney World every 2 years, because it doesn't seem like there's enough time to experience everything that specifically like the Magic Kingdom has to offer, but just all the parks. And now that they're like adding things almost every 2 years, or every year even. I think they added Avatar last year, Toy Story this year, Star Wars next year. There's just new things to go see. But my son is he's 6.5. My daughter is 4-ish, a little older than 4. And when we went last year, my daughter, when did we go? I think we went right around when she turned 3. And they don't do, it was just really hot, and they were getting really tired pretty easily. We went to Hollywood Studios during one of the Star Wars marches that they were doing, and it scared the kids. There's just a lot of people. So like I would love to take them to Disneyland, because for us, we live like within 5 minutes from Sesame Place, which is the only, I guess it used to be I think there used to be a Sesame Place down in Texas somewhere, right?
Yes. And in fact, it's funny that you bring that up, because I went, oh man, I was probably about 6 or 7. I mean, it shut down a long, long time ago. But yeah, actually, we've got old pictures of me there when I was about 6 or 7.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know if maybe my memory is just my parents telling me about, like, oh yeah, there used to be more than one Sesame Place, or if like I remember having I guess a placemat that showed all the different Sesame Places, because I think there was like 3 of them at one point. But that now it's, to my knowledge, I think there's only one, and it's the one that's here in Pennsylvania. And then they have like a little land in Busch Gardens. But the comparison I made to Disneyland was like, when we went, I was like, this is like a busy day at Sesame. Like it's not, and that's not bad. Like it's a manageable day still. So I would love to go back, simply just to go back to Disneyland and have the kids like kind of have like a stress-free day. So LA is great. I would love to go back, and I hope to go back soon. Again, and like I said, I think there's a lot to do that the kids even would love to, go experience, because there's so much, and compared to Disney World, you don't have to do Disney for a full week. You can do Disney for like a day or two, and then move on to other parks like Universal and stuff like that.
Yeah, I could do it for a day, especially if they have Avatar. I would like to experience that, but I couldn't do the week. No.
See, Disney World, I'm immersed, and I if we go to Florida, I like. I would maybe by the end of it, it's like, okay, I'm ready to go home. But that's just because there's you're just moving the whole time. But there's, and like, for instance, like I think Epcot is a park that like, I don't need to do this again, like for a couple of years, because not much has changed. I think we went. I think we went for a day last year, which was the second time we went. But like, I didn't make it a goal to run around all the worlds and drink. I just kind of relaxed because like I had already done it. Um, but Epcot's one that you can take or leave. Hollywood Studios, I really love. Like that to me is like my favorite park, because again, that's like where all the geeky stuff is. And Magic Kingdom is somewhere you can get lost in. All the other parks are usually like a 1 day thing, but Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios, I could like spend 2 or 3 days in before I got really tired of them.
Yeah, I'd like to, if you ever decide to go to LA, without your kids, but just you and your fiance, there's so much to do. And kind of the way you feel about Disneyland or Disney World, I actually feel about the city. Just every time you go, there's something else. Well, I haven't done this, I haven't done this, I haven't done this. And there's all the Hollywood Hills
Yeah.
tours. I mean, there's the cheesy stuff, like the stars and Sunset Boulevard. But there's so much more, and there's a lot of history, and cultural history there, that you can really partake in. And I'm interested in a lot. And next time you're there, you have to check out, and I'm going to like totally give them free advertisement here, Uncle Charlie's. It's on Manhattan Beach. It is the best breakfast you have ever had in your life. I promise you. I've talked several people there, and they all say it is the hands down best breakfast they've ever had in their life.
It's funny because you said that. I was like, why does that sound so familiar? And it's not related at all. But I was like, that's like our pizza shop is Uncle Charlie's, like around the corner from us.
They have it's the suburb of LA, so it's in Manhattan Beach, and they have the best pancakes, the best omelets, the best coffee, and I think it's just standard coffee. I don't even think it's a designer brand, but it is, and it's packed every day. I mean, you have to get there early, and it's tiny. The whole place is probably as big as my
Oh
living
wow.
room, and yeah, every day. And, there's outdoor seating, and can sit outside, and you'll sit outside because you don't want to wait. But to me, it's a staple. You just have to go when you go to LA.
Well, I'll have to keep that in mind. And for me, like one of the staples to go whenever I get a chance to go out west, I went out there. I think once for work, and then once for like years and years ago, and then once for the LuLaRoe thing last year, and I fell in love with In-N-Out. That's like, and I don't know if does In-N-Out reach Texas? I know it's like primarily California, maybe Nevada, but
We don't have any down here, the Bryan College Station area, but I believe either San Antonio or the Dallas area, because I've heard a couple of people talking about it. But here in Texas, we are Whataburger people.
oh, okay, yeah. I don't know that is that only in Texas, or have they franchised out?
Yeah, in Texas.
Okay.
In Texas. You need to get you a
Yeah,
Whataburger.
I've heard about that. Like for us, see, I there in the Philly area. I mean, we have Philly cheesesteak, so I guess that's why we don't have like a specific burger joint. Like the closest thing we have, which to me I think is maybe it's primarily East Coast, but I feel like they're so common that I feel like they're bigger than that. Is Five Guys. Um, I don't know
Mhm.
if that reaches. I don't know how far that reaches out, because again, like it's just so commonplace around here. But that like for me, Five Guys is the closest thing to an In-N-Out burger you can get. And it's I don't know, I love the In-N-Out. Their fries, the In-N-Out fries, you can take or leave. Like they're not anything special, but their burger is amazing. That's my staple when I go out there. Is I gotta find the first thing I need to do, and before we go to our hotel is get that In-N-Out, and then the last thing I have to do before we get to the airport to go home is get another In-N-Out.
Yeah, you need to try a Whataburger.
Yeah, they LuLaRoe. I don't know where in Texas. I know that they go like they do a couple conventions outside of like the big one, and I know that we've talked about going to. I think they do one in Texas, or they have. I don't know if it's a regular thing, but they did one at least one. I don't know. I would. I don't. I don't know if there's anything like that would bring us to Texas.
Probably not.
What's that?
I hate to say it.
There's
Probably not. I hate to say it.
yeah. Well, and it's nothing against the the state. It's just that like there's I think unless you live in Texas, and I think the same could be said about like a lot of states. Like this, I think the same could be said about Pennsylvania. Is like unless there's something that brings you out to Pennsylvania, if you're not from like the tri-state area, you really have no reason to go to Pennsylvania.
See, I've always wanted to go to Pennsylvania. The furthest north that I've made it is to DC.
Okay.
But it's funny that you bring that up because, like I said, me and my dad just went to Colorado a week or two ago, and I brought it up. I said, I think we were looking at some people around us that were obviously from there. And I said, I wonder if anybody ever, just packs up and visits Houston, unless you have family, friends, something in Texas, even though we do have, attractions, we have beaches, but, there's thousands of miles of coastline in the United States. I don't know that people just come visit Texas, just for leisure and recreation. I doubt it.
Yeah, and because the only time I've been out there is for work, and I can't knock it because I enjoyed it. And like actually, one of my favorite, I think I've been out there maybe 2 or 3 times for work, but the one that sticks out in my mind is working at that Super Pages place, which I think was in the Dallas area, but that was like such a fun experience because Santina, who's that guitar player? I know it's not Santino.
Santana.
Santana, that's it. Santana, and I used to, I guess I'm not a huge fan, obviously, because I can't remember the name, but I used to have at least 1 or 2 of his albums somewhere on one of my devices and whatnot. And that was, he was playing there the night that we were installing their point of sale system, and because there was like issues in previous installs, they're like, we need you there the night of the event. And it was like a free concert for us. All we had to do was walk around and check on the cashiers and then stare at the at the concert going on. So that was like a really cool experience. But that's the thing is like unless there's something to bring me down there. And again, I can say that about probably like 45 states. Unless there's something to bring me there, I'm not really going to go.
Sure. Like I don't see myself ever going, and I'm not knocking like, North or South Dakota, but don't ever see myself visiting there unless I'm retired and doing some kind of RV trip through the US.
You know what? Yeah, I would agree. Like, I don't know what states I haven't visited. I think because my job that I had years and years ago was traveling around the country, and I haven't like gone back to count in a while to see how many states I've been to, but I know I was either through half of them or slightly more than half. And that might be like something that I try to do when the kids are grown and I'm retired is like visit the states I haven't visited yet, which would include both North and South Dakota. I don't think I've been to either of those. Cause again, like, I don't know why, like there's nothing about, I don't know anything about this. I couldn't even tell you where they necessarily are, except that one is below the other.
Yeah. The middle of the map just kind of, it looks like a big blurb to me. I hate to say it, not knocking any of it, but I don't know.
Yeah. And oddly enough, it's one of those things that I think more as a kid, because like you're learning it and it's beat into you that you need to know it. But it's probably the first thing that I forgot once I was out of school. All right. So before we get to the end and wrap up here, I do want to ask, what made you decide to write a book? Did you have an interest in writing before this, or is this just something that you're like, man, this would make a great book, I got to get it down?
Yeah, a combination. I'm a bibliomaniac. I read. It's been a part of my life since I was a child. I am just a big book nerd. Book nerds unite. it's who I am. And I've always, kind of thought, I'd like to write a book someday. And a lot of my colleagues or friends on a variety of other topics, have said, well, you should really write a book one day. You should really write a book one day about different, either my experiences growing up or my experiences working. I worked in the prison system for 10 years. But I almost kind of like wanted to put a tester out, if that makes sense, like, let me see if I can. Let me see if it's something I can do. And, I kind of tossed it around back and forth. And I thought, well, what would I want to write a book about? Something that I know. I don't want to just, start telling stories. I'm definitely not a creative person. And thinking about it, I thought, well, I know how to buy a house, as silly as that sounds. I know how to do it. I've done it multiple times, and I've always done it kind of under the gun in a time crunch. The first time I bought one, I literally had 30 days because I was actually leaving my job. And so I was kind of running my time out. I needed to buy a house before I left my job because the job that I was in came with a house. So I was like, I kind of got this down. I've kind of got it down to a science. And yet I know there are so many people out there that struggle with it and they don't know what to do. So here we go, and I thought to me, it's pretty basic information, but I will get the information out there. And if just one person reads it and is able to buy a house, great, I help somebody. And B, it will also walk me through the writing a book process. So if I decide to do it again, or, maybe do some stories about growing up or, my time in various careers, I know what I'm doing. And then once I sat down, it was a pretty neat experience. And even kind of just going back and thinking about the first time I bought the house, and I think I mentioned it in my email, 30 days after I closed on my first house, Hurricane Ike hit. And I lived on the coast. I lived on the Gulf Coast of Texas. And it was just like, you're kidding me. First the real estate market crashed when I'm trying to buy a new house. And 30 days after I closed, a hurricane hit it. And this is just going back to those memories was a pretty neat process.
We had a similar experience, except it kind of worked in our favor. Is Hurricane Sandy hit 3 weeks before we closed. And our set, and we were very lucky compared to New Jersey, obviously, but our area still got hit pretty hard. And the section we moved into is one of two sections in the county that still had like the original trees that were planted like 60, 70 years ago when these sections were first built up. So they were tall trees, and a lot of them didn't get cut down. And when we bought the house, I made an offer. There was 4 trees, and then after Sandy, 2 of them fell across the street, and went across the street. And so it sucked to have the cleanup, because the cleanup was kind of left for us, and we worked all that out in the closing. But I felt very fortunate that it happened before we closed, because we didn't have to deal with anything insurance wise.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a headache. So during Ike, my neighbor's tree fell on my house. I mean, it was crazy. And I got home, and because obviously I had evacuated, and there's this huge oak tree just there was a back room, and it was just kind of laying there on the roof. And it was just like, oh my God. But it was such a disaster area that the insurance people were just coming out, and the guy just jumped on the roof, and he just basically, bam, 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 tree, this could happen, and just like write you a check on the spot for the maximum amount of damage that could be done. And so fortunately, although it was a horrible event, the response from the insurance company was pretty painless. But I got out there and we cleaned a lot of it up ourselves. But I was just like, you can't be serious. I just bought my first house, and now it's going to get blown away in a hurricane.
Yeah, it was when we had made the offer, and I think it was accepted. The hurricane happened, and that's the next morning when all the damage had been done, we took a drive around the section, and it was. I had never seen so much damage, and again, the very light, I would have to assume, compared to a lot of other places, because we are inland enough from the ocean, from Atlantic Ocean, to really not have to worry about a hurricane usually. But I mean, there were sections of the street blocked because trees were falling. I mean, and a lot of houses got demolished. It sounds like what your house had, just a tree right through the middle of it, or through the back room, or several different scenarios, because there's just a lot of trees in this section. And it was But the same thing. I don't know how it worked. I don't know how the insurance companies worked around because we didn't have to deal with it. But the section got cleaned up pretty quick, and seemed like everyone kind of recovered quickly that had a tree through their house.
Yeah, no, it's amazing because you've got all these construction companies and fly by nights that they flock to an area. They flock to an area, so you've got more than just your local people. You've got groups that just travel, basically doing this cleanup and repair. So,
if you decide to move forward with writing another book, it sounds like you're kind of maybe shying away from the fiction world. You're going to stick with some nonfiction stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just not imaginative or creative. So I don't even really read a lot of fiction. I read nonfiction. I read a lot of memoirs, historical nonfiction. There's a lot of cultural, anthropological nonfiction. So my plan is to expand on the current book. I do want to expand on it because right now it basically just leads up into you finding a realtor, and I think I'm going to take it a little further. Mine is a lot more of the background work and just put in some information that's come out in the last 3 or 4 months. Put out an expanded edition, but moving forward, I might, because I've had several people say I either need to write about some experiences I had growing up, or like I said, I worked for 10 years in the Texas prison system and men's facility, so definitely got some stories there. It's just I always, it's getting those stories kind of back to the forefront of your mind, but then I'm also want to be very careful because I don't want to tell anybody else's story. And that's something that I kind of struggled with, even in writing about some of my experiences growing up and even in early adulthood. I don't want to tell anybody else's story. And it happens, when you're telling your own story, there are other actors in your story. And you have to be, I think, very careful about some of the things you reveal or some of the things that you say, because they either don't want it told or their perception may be different.
Yeah. And that is like everyday conversation is is almost either telling your story along with a bunch of other people or actively avoiding telling their story. It's because for me, the reason this podcast is marketed kind of as a long form interview podcast, but at the end of the day, it's more of I consider it a long form conversation podcast, because I and my audience, I think, would agree, a terrible interviewer. But if I don't prepare for anything, which many people say that you're just lazy, you don't prepare. That's if I prepare, I have a list of questions. I have a list of like 10 questions. I ask one. I don't pay attention to what you say because I'm so nervous about the next question that I just ignore everything you said, don't play off the conversation, and read question 2. So that's why I like to call this more of a conversation. But that's all that is storytelling. A conversation is just storytelling. So
Yeah, I think we all, for the most part, and I think I was reading somewhere about how to write, and it said everybody has a story, and the author felt like everybody has a book in them. Some people have more than one, some people have 10, but everybody has a book. But it's something that I've struggled with. How much of somebody else's story can you really tell?
And this is kind of a good note to maybe end on before we get your plugs in, is that thing you read about someone saying everyone has a story to tell is I'm obviously a fan of podcasts because I do one. But the guy that got me into it is Kevin Smith, who directed Clerks in the 90s and a bunch of other movies that people have either heard of or they haven't. But he does, a lot of podcasting, and he says basically the same thing about, and he's always kind of told people before podcasts, he always used to tell people at the end of his Q&As, like, hey, go make a movie. Anyone can do it. I did it. And then, he's a little bit more elegant about it, but Now he says the same thing about podcasting because it is the one of the easiest, well, not really least expensive, but definitely less expensive than a movie way to tell a story. And he says literally the same thing you just said about everyone has a story to tell and everyone has an audience that's willing to listen or, in your case, read. And you just have to do it. That's like, and it's funny. I've talked to people who wanted to start a podcast or have, wanted to do something. And I said, well, here's the thing, the number one hurdle to get over is just doing it. If it's everyone wants to do something, it's just a matter of getting off your rear end and actually doing it. Once you do it, then it's all easy from there.
Once you do it, it's done.
Yeah, exactly. But it's literally, someone was asking about the podcast and they're like, how do I just I want to do this, but I don't know, there's this, and this. It's like, you're going to make up a million different things to get in the way. You just need to find an hour, sit down with no interruption and just hit record and do it. And then it will be easy every time you do it. And I think the same could be said probably about any kind of creative forum you have, whether it's podcasting, filmmaking, or writing a book.
I agree, because I sat on the idea, I can't tell you how long, and finally I just said, open up your computer and just start hammering away. And once you take that first step, it's like the domino effect, but I think that it's the first step. And God, I'm cliche, I sound like a cliche right now, but it's that first step that is the hardest.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I say the same thing. And I mainly just kind of regurgitate what Kevin Smith has said. But it's that first step, as you said. And here's something that I don't know if you know of, because it might be more for fiction writers, but something that I try to do. And I usually don't, quote unquote, succeed based off what they set the goal to. But there's in November is National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo. So that's and I'll include the link in the show notes and whatnot, along with all your links that we're about to talk about. But it's a great little challenge that this nonprofit organization has put together to encourage, everyone, but they also have a strong encouragement for kids. And I say kids, but teenagers, whoever, young people, to get out there and write. And it's I think it's in the month of November, they want you to write every day, write about, I think an average is about 1,600 words a day, and get to 50,000 words in that month. And you'll have yourself a novel by the time you're done. And I think that's such a cool challenge that I try to do every year. And I usually don't hit it because I have my hands in so many different projects, but it's a fun exercise. And it's something that I think everyone, if you're not going to start a podcast, then do that writing challenge, because I think it's a cool exercise. Even if you don't succeed, at least it's you're taking that first step, and then it will lead you to the next step and keep on taking you down to the path until you're done writing your book. It might take longer than that month, but I highly encourage everyone to check it out.
That's amazing. And that's something I could have my high school kids do. Definitely.
Oh, and they actually do, and I can give you the link once we're done here. They do something, I think throughout the entire year, but definitely I think in April they do something that's a little bit, I think, geared towards kids. I don't, and I say that as anyone basically younger than me. So I would definitely check it out and see if they offer anything that's good for your students. I'll get you the link, but people here that are listening to this episode are not here necessarily for that link. They're here about your book and anywhere else they can find you. So please share any plugs and links that you want to get out there to the world.
So first, of course, I would say go on Amazon.com, because we're exclusively through Amazon, and just look for The 90-Day House. And the book will pop up. It's currently a bestseller in a couple of categories. So if they would just download that, if you do have Kindle Unlimited, it is free. I am offering it through Kindle Unlimited for about another month and a half. The e-copy is currently only $2.99. I mean, to me, that's just a very risk-free investment. And if you're interested in getting the paper copy, it's $9.99. But I definitely, if anyone is interested in purchasing their first house or another home within the next year to 18 months, $299 is a good investment. And with that $299, you also get access to a group for everyone who's purchased the book. And I regularly post updates. But one of the most important things that I post is every zero down mortgage product that I find, I post it. And so this saves people from looking. You can always find me on Twitter and Instagram at Kenzie A. Bond. I'm Kenzie A. Bond everywhere. And then if you just want to check out some more information about the book, it's 90dayhouse.com.
Very good. We'll have all those links in the show notes, of course, as well. In case you're in the middle of driving, please don't open up your phone to go to these sites. Just wait until you're safe somewhere and then check it all out. Kenzie, thank you for doing the show. It was a pleasure talking to you about real estate and houses and, of course, the tangents of LA.
Batman.
Thanks once again to Kenzie for being on the show. Check out the 90-Day House, available on Amazon.com. We'll have a link in the show notes for you. Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're still with us at this point, again, it means a lot to us. We normally have a lot of announcements that I like to make, but because of Keystone Comic Con, I'm kind of still like in the middle of catching up on everything. We're working on booking our January festival. It will be our third annual festival that we run to celebrate Everything is Awesome, the anniversary of this podcast, and also to raise money for a cancer organization. We'll be working with Headstrong this year, so we're changing directions, and we're also going to look into expanding the festival beyond just Tattooed Mom, beyond just podcasting. We're looking at comedy in general. We want podcasters, we want comedians, we want comedy films, we want to do screen some short films, some films, whatever it is. So if you are, this is what I will announce, if you are a comedy person, whether you're an improv comedian, a stand-up comedian, a podcaster, if you are a filmmaker and you want to show off your movie at the 2019 Everything is Awesome Headstrong Comedy Festival, raising money to benefit Headstrong, the Headstrong Foundation, please hit me up on Twitter at ThatNerdyKev. I can send you an application for the festival. We are looking for top talent. We're going to be in the Philadelphia area. Primarily, we're going to be looking at South Street at venues there, including Tattooed Mom and some other venues that we'll announce as we get closer. So, yet again, if you are a comedy person and you want to get involved, you want to help, you want to support the Headstrong Foundation, please hit me up on Twitter at ThatNerdyKev. You can either DM me or just tag me up in a tweet and we'll connect. If you are looking for other shows to listen to beyond this great show, Everything is Awesome, check out Bullies Keep Out. Dana sits down and talks about ways to cope with bullying and other aspects that stem from bullying. She also sits down with some great people, like one of the most recent episodes that will be posted a day or two after this, to talk about their own experiences and how they deal with bullying or other aspects that kind of fall under the umbrella. Bullies Keep Out, I think, kind of touches, they touch a whole bunch of different areas, more than just bullying, but a lot of the things that they work on all stem or can stem from bullying, including depression, suicide, and stuff like that. So Dana does a great job, so make sure you check that out on thatentertains.com/network. Super Friends. In October, as I mentioned earlier on the show, at the top of the show, we'll be launching 2 new shows. First, After Party of One, where I sit down with people in the tabletop role-playing community to discuss recent episodes of Jeff Stormer's Party of One podcast. And of course, Black Squadron Radio, a Star Wars news and topical podcast. That actually will probably be starting in November, along with another show that we'll be talking about in a few weeks here. We'd like to end Everything is Awesome with a call to action. Super Friends, there are a lot of terrible things happening right now, and it can feel like you can't do anything to help, but you can. It takes people like us to make a difference, and one of the easiest and most important ways to take action is to call your representatives about issues that are important to you. With November looming, November's right around the corner, Election Day is right around the corner, there is no greater thing to make sure you have your ability to vote. Make sure you are registered to vote. You can go to vote.org to check your status. And if you're not registered to vote, register to vote. If we want to see real change, we need to do it ourselves. We had a low turnout at the last major election. and that might be why we're where we're at today. Whether you agree with that or not, if you are happy with where things are, you still should go out and vote. But if you're not, if you want to see things turn around, I implore you, go out and register to vote. It is your right to go do it. Please, please, please. Let's take this country back from the reality TV show that it's turned into. And it all starts with us at the midterm elections. Vote.org to register to vote. When I call my reps, I use a site called 5calls.org. That's the number 5calls.org. There, you'll find issue summaries of issues that are important to you, contact info for your representatives, and a script to read while you're on the phone to make sure your message gets across. Calling is quick, easy, and is one of the most important ways to have your voice heard. It can make a tremendous difference. Let your voice be heard. Thank you to our supporters on patreon.com/thatentertains. If you want to support us in a non-monetary way, word-of-mouth recommendations and 5-star rating reviews on iTunes are the best way to spread the good word of awesome. You can find us on @RealAwesomePod on Facebook.com and Twitter. You can also find us on Instagram @AwesomePodcast, and we're available on awesomepodcast.com and, of course, thatentertains.com/network. You can get more news about this show at awesomepodcast.com and thatentertains.com. But also on my personal Twitter @ThatNerdyKev is where I do a lot of things. If you're interested in ad rates, live appearances, help with your podcast, or have a question or comment, email us at awesome@crudehammerstudios.com. Everything is Awesome is a production of That Entertains Podcast Network in association with Crude Humor Studios. Crude Humor Studios is a Philadelphia-based production company specializing in audio. You can find more information at crudehumorstudios.com. Thanks for listening, super friends. We've been awesome.
That's Entertainment Podcast Network. Entertainment and culture. Artist-owned, fan-supported.